Hello, and welcome to the Proactive Caregiving Podcast. As a CPA with over 20 years as an industry accountant, Jessica stepped away from the corporate world to become a full-time caregiver for her mother. Having learned invaluable lessons along the way, she is now here to share those with you and to invite you to join her on this caregiver's journey. Here is your host, Jessica Cannon.
Hello, everybody. I'm so glad you're here with me today. I am the Proactive Caregiver, and I specialize in educating others on how to be proactive by empowering you, the caregiver. If you cannot take care of yourself, then you cannot take care of your loved one. In my earlier podcast titled, How is Dementia Diagnosed?, I touched on the potential for dementia to be a result from cancer treatment, such as chemotherapy. This is not meant to scare you. If you or your loved one is living with some form of cancer, this is intended to inform the listeners. There is still a wide misconception that dementia is a genetic disease. While I'm sure many may want to dig in their heels to debate this, I simply want to add another thought process to the debate. It is my understanding that dementia is not a disease, but a loss of mental function in more than two areas. Dementia is far more than simply the loss of memory, but it is noticeable because of the loss of memory and other mental abilities that affect daily life. It's rarely the sole cause because it may include a series of symptoms that affect language, judgment, memory, of course, spatial abilities, and visual abilities. In regards to chemotherapy, information is still being gathered, so there is not a definitive answer. But when you work in oncology, as my next guest does, then you are able to see firsthand the unexpected effect cancer with treatment has towards dementia-related side effects. But before we get into the details, please keep in mind this is strictly based on personal experience and not at all intended to be medical advice or replacement for seeking care for your loved one. Esther Mambazi is an inpatient oncology nurse who lives in Norway with her husband and two children, 8 and 14. She works with patients living with gastro-related cancers. This group includes forms of esophageal, gastroesophageal junction, stomach, pancreas, intestinal, gallbladder, bile duct, colon, and rectal cancer. Although she loves her job because it's very rewarding with patients and their families, it does tend to chip away at her soul. I know this feeling because as we both meet more caregivers, it's quite revealing how overwhelming their journey can be when you see their eyes filled with exhaustion and fear of the unknown. Thank you so much for coming on with me today, Esther.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So did you always know you wanted to be a nurse?
Actually, no. I used to work in an office in admin. But when my husband relocated to Norway, and we live in a small town, there were not so many administrative jobs. So I ended up joining nursing. And I like it. I haven't regretted one day. It is more rewarding than my office job I had earlier.
Yes, I can imagine.
Yes.
I definitely enjoyed reading through your blogs. I guess, like me, writing became a cathartic process for healing. What made you decide to start writing about your experiences?
Yeah. I don't know, but my mom, around 10 years ago, my mom was diagnosed with cervical cancer after a routine pap smear.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say routine. It was the first time she had done it. She had never done it before. And when she went to do it, the results came back. She had cancer, not even cell changes, but it was already cancer. And we panicked. I'll be honest, I panicked.
Mm-hmm.
I panicked. And I am a recovering perfectionist. Mm-hmm. You know how perfectionists control other people through their perfectionism. So I started calling my siblings and organizing meetings and, I just wanted to get this over and done with. I didn't even consult my mother, like, how are you dealing with this? No, I just zoomed in and took over.
Mm-hmm.
I started calling people and pulling strings and organizing things and, and in the process, I annoyed everybody. I annoyed everybody and I couldn't even see what I was doing. In my head, I was doing the right thing by zooming in and taking over and, organizing. My mother was 63 at the time and she needed like pre-surgery tests. She needed a lot of them. She needed an what is called echocardiogram.
Mm-hmm.
She needed like a bunch of blood tests and everything. And in my head, the people doing those tests were taking their time. They were dragging their feet. So I was calling. I don't know whether you imagine. I was that person.
Mm-hmm.
Then, when my mother was operated on, and luckily they took everything with surgery. She didn't need chemo. Surgery took everything, and the margin, she lost the uterus and the ovaries and everything. They took out everything, and that was enough for her. She didn't need chemo. But after she was operated, after the results came back, I sat down and I looked back at the mess I had become, and I think I was operating from fear.
Yes.
Operating from fear of losing my mother because we grew up with our mother only. She was a single mom, 5 children. So I think it was the fear driving me and not being irrational at all.
Right.
So, then I started seeing the same thing. It is so, I don't know what to say, amazing. When you have gone through something, you see the same thing. You see other people doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Before I became like a crazy person, I didn't see people like that. But after I had been like that, controlling everybody and calling everybody and annoying everybody in the process, that is when I started to see other caregivers. Many of them, not all of them, many of them do the same. They swing in action and try to control and steer things and pull strings and, and they get so burned out in the process.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I took like a back seat and I was watching from a distance and I see many people do that.
It seems to be I don't want to say it's absolutely the natural response. The unknown is fearful. I did the same thing with my own mother, taking her to many different appointments and trying to get diagnoses for her. The unknown is so scary that the only way to feel like was in control, I seem to do the same thing. And I am also that recovering perfectionist. I had to learn to let go that there are not many things perfect, and going through this process, there is by no means a perfect way to go through it. But I can understand the need for taking charge, getting in control of things. And there's also that area of trusting the process. I've heard this several times, and I can only imagine it's very difficult for newly diagnosed patients and the caregivers with them to be able to trust the process. So how do you help couples or individuals help focus them on the areas that they can control over the areas that they cannot?
Yeah. I have I don't know, it is not mine. I learned it from a workshop I attended. There is like a small, I want to use the word formula.
Mm-hmm.
Like you write down the things I can do today. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
I can check my refrigerator if we have food. That I can do now, today. I can call my employer and let them know what has happened. I need a few days to gather my thoughts around what has just happened. That I can do today.
Mm-hmm.
Then there are things I cannot do myself. I need help with these things. So you sit down and look at those things. What are those things? Okay, we do not have the groceries. I have a friend of mine who can help me pick up groceries from the store. I need somebody to help me pick up the children from the daycare center or drive them to their respective activities. If you have that person, and they'll do it for you. Mm-hmm. Many people have those people, but because we want to do everything, we want to get rid of whatever is going on and go back to our normal life. Mm-hmm. We are not even able to see the possibilities around us. We are not able to see who can help me, who cannot help me, what do I need help with. We just want to do everything.
Right. And we need to do everything just to make it the reality of all of it, to grasp it. We have to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Then there's a third category, things that can wait. What things can wait? Things I don't have to do today. I don't have to deal with them right now, tomorrow, the other day. They can wait. Okay, things like, what will my spouse need when he comes home after he's discharged? You don't have to think about that today. Maybe he'll be discharged next Friday or next week. Mm-hmm. Wait until that day. Because even if I start thinking about it now, there's nothing I can do about it. And it's just driving me crazy. It's sapping my energy. And,
mm-hmm.
Another thing like activities for children on the coming spring break, for example. It's not spring break yet, so you don't even need to talk about that. You don't even need to think about it. Just let it and deal with it as it comes.
Right.
Yeah. And then there's the last one, things that I cannot control. I have absolutely no control over the trajectory of the disease. That is number one.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't help me if I spend the whole night awake worrying about what the trajectory is. It doesn't change the disease. It doesn't take away his pain, her pain, staying up all night worrying. It doesn't help anything. If a caregiver stays up the whole night worrying about the PET scan they are having tomorrow or the MRI they are doing the other day, the following day, there is nothing you can do about that.
Right.
So I usually tell my caregivers, write down like a tree and write down things you can control, write them down, things you can't control, things you need help with, just to sort your head,
mm-hmm.
like you're not overwhelmed. Yeah. You get overwhelmed, you can't see anything, you can't see any possibilities, you just go in a dark hole. And when people swear by that simple, like I said, formula, they swear by it, they sit down and they write down to get things out of their head.
It is very helpful. It's like creating that pros and con list that for me, I have to do many times just to do a brain download, just to get everything out of my mind. And it helps me to sleep at night when I can write it down, knowing that those thoughts are on that piece of paper and no longer in my mind, making me toss and turn overnight, keeping me from getting good sleep for the next day. And so it helps caregivers to help refocus them on their health, because a lot of times when they're so wrapped up in the diagnosis and the unknown of what may happen, they let their health go and they don't realize that.
Yeah. And by writing those things down, you will become proactive. Like your podcast says, like you will become proactive. You can see the possibilities that you're not able to see if you don't do that brain dump. You see possibilities. Like I said, what things can I get help with? Okay. A friend of mine can help me pick groceries, can help me drive the children to the respective activities. Neighbor can help me. We can carpool. If you do not write those things down, like you don't see all those because everything is mangled up in the brain.
Exactly. So when it comes to the children that are involved, the families, I mean, it's
Yes,
hard enough for the adults to learn and deal with the emotions that come with it. The families are learning cancer terminology, and it's like learning a new language. How do you break this down for the couples to help them explain it to their children?
yeah. What we say, or what I say mostly is honesty, and more honesty.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you tell them, you meet them where they are. Because if you have a 5-year-old, you do not talk to a 5-year-old like you talk to a 14-year-old. Because a 14-year-old has probably heard of somebody who has cancer, who has had cancer or something like that. Mm-hmm. And a 5-year-old has probably not heard of that. So we tell them to meet them where they are, to inform them daddy or mommy is dealing with this disease, with the cancer of the colon or whatever they are dealing with. And the doctors are doing whatever they can. We don't know how this is going, but the doctors are doing whatever they can do to help daddy be healthy again. Mm-hmm. Some days daddy will be very tired, sleeping on the couch, probably, or maybe sleeping in the bed the whole day. He'll be very tired because of the medicine he gets to destroy that disease he has. Mm-hmm. But cancer is not contagious. You can still sit in daddy's lap. You can still give daddy a kiss, stuff like that. It is not contagious.
Right.
You could say, I need everybody to cooperate with each other, be nice with each other. Some days dinner will be late because that is the reality. You can't. Very few people maintain the same routine they did before they had cancer in their family. So some days dinner will be late. Maybe some days another person will drive you to school or pick you up from school. Mm-hmm. Because just say things the way they are. However, there is no right or wrong. It is the parents' choice to tell their children or not. Mm-hmm. I have heard, I know, not very hard, but I know someone who did not do that. They chose not to do that, and that was their choice. I cannot say whether it is right or wrong. It was their choice. They say they wanted to protect their children. And they stood by that. Mm-hmm. And that was their choice. Yes. So a 14-year-old, you just say how it is. He or she will get chemotherapy and lose the hair and lose the weight. And because a 14-year-old understands more than a 5-year-old, 6, 7, 8-year-old. Mm-hmm. So, and one thing we encourage parents to do, this is on the parents' premise. We encourage the parents to inform the school teacher. Because the class teacher, because we do not know how a particular child will respond to the news like that. True. Some children respond with destructive behavior, bad grades. Mm-hmm. They are withdrawn. So it is very good if the class teacher knows. Schools have counselors. Mm-hmm. And if it's more beneficial if the school counselor knows as well about what's going on at home. I had a patient one time. I don't want to say him or her, but this patient had chosen not to inform their children. Both of them agreed not to inform their children. And I said, okay, have you informed anybody else? Yeah, they had informed their class teacher and the school counselor and a few parents in their circle who had children in the same classes as their children. Then I asked her, are you aware that you have no control over what other people do in their home? Mm-hmm. You told them that you have no control over whether they will tell their children. The biggest risk here is your children finding out from the playground that their parent is dying. You should have seen the stare, the look on their faces. They had not thought about it, that it can go that way. So that made them rethink, and they sat down and they told their children.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
They think they're protecting their children, but you can't control others who
No,
feel
you
that
can't.
they had the right to know.
Mm.
And it is.
And we encourage people who have parents with older children from 10 and above to write down. We encourage the children to write down how they feel, like to get things out of their head, ask questions, to have like open channels of communication in the home. You may not have all the answers, but encourage them to ask questions so they know they can always come to you when they are wondering about something. It is better to say, I don't know the answer to that. I don't know, but thanks for asking. I'll maybe find out or something like that.
Right. Because the children may actually have similar questions that the adults have.
Yes, they do. A friend of mine is older now. She's almost 50. She lost her mother a long time ago. She was 12. And she could see something was going on with her mother, but nobody bothered to tell her. And the sibling, they were two children. Nobody told them. I think they thought they were protecting them. They were doing the right thing. But she could see something was going on. The mother was losing weight at a fast rate. She spent many days vomiting, lying on the couch. And then one day she came home and the mother was gone. Passed away. Yeah. And she did not understand. She said, "You said she's going to be fine. What happened?" And this is something she is still carrying with her many, many years later.
Yeah.
She's almost 50. So we can see the damage it causes when we think we are protecting the children.
Right.
But we are, in the long run, I don't think we are. But like I said, nobody dictates what people should do in their homes, but research shows it is better to be open.
I can totally understand. It is a right to choose to tell friends and family whether or not,
Yes.
But at the same time, from the child's side of it, and even some young adults, we assume that our parents will live for many, many years. And so there are things that we may want to say or things that we may have wanted to do with our loved ones. But that assumption of time, that we have plenty of time, when in reality, the secret that's kept is there really isn't as much time. And so that haunting for the rest of their lives is difficult.
Maybe they wanted to say something to them. We don't know.
Yeah. So from what my little understanding of this is, certain cancers can spread to the brain and they can affect cognitive abilities. And I know you've seen younger patients with cancer who literally experience cognitive failure overnight. The family then has a huge problem if documents are not in place or a plan in order. What do you suggest patients and their families can do to prepare for this type of result?
Yeah, in the beginning of the diagnosis, in the early stages of the diagnosis, from my experience, not all cancer goes to the brain. Certain types of lung cancer spread to the brain, breast cancer, melanoma, and I have heard of colon cancer. I have heard of it that spreads to the brain, but not all cancers spread to the brain. But the challenge is, in the beginning of the diagnosis, patients and caregivers do not want to listen to things like get things in order, write down your wishes, state your wishes. They think you're being negative. Like when you start talking about things like that, they interpret it as being a negative person, like, you understand?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but this is the time to get things in order. This is the time to get your power of attorney in order, your last will and testament in order, your living will in order. A living will, for those who don't know, is a legal, I think, binding document that sets your wishes, whether you want to be fed through a tube, whether you want to be put on mechanical ventilator if you cannot breathe on your own, how long you want to be kept on a mechanical ventilator. I have seen in my not in my job now, but I saw it earlier. I used to work in a nursing home. There were patients there who were lying with a feeding tube and unconscious. They had their eyes closed 24/7 and they had lived there for years. They were being fed through a tube or a button on the stomach. And this is because the patient had not stated their wishes and the family could not agree on what to do. So they ended up letting the patient leave. You understand?
Yes.
They ended up because nobody has the conscience to say, I don't want that for my mother or my father or my husband or my uncle, whatever. So they ended up letting the patient leave. And it is very sad. It is a sad situation for all involved. So that is the importance of a living will. You state your wishes, what you want your people to do, in case you're no longer capable of making decisions on your behalf. Because the truth is, when your loved one has cancer, their chances of dying before you automatically go up. At the same time, the caregiver can die before the patient, but statistically, the chances of someone who has cancer go up because of the cancer, because of the treatment they get, everything, the chances automatically shoot up. And it's best to have those documents in order, but we have to be very tactical when we bring up that subject. So people will shut you down, shut you out immediately. They don't want to hear.
Right.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden, I have seen this with my own eyes, not once, not twice. Someone was talking properly today. He's talking properly today, and the next minute, you can't make out what they said. And we have a challenge. I remember there was a family a long time ago. There was a family, a very small family. There were 2 children, and they did not agree on what was best. The one child stood with the doctors and said, I don't want my mother living like that. That is not a life she would have wanted, being fed in the tube, unconscious, not knowing whatever is going on. She didn't even have, we test pain stimuli. There are places on the body you press, and if the person is like conscious, they will give signs of that they're feeling the pain, and she didn't have that. So that one child stood with the doctors. She said, I don't want my mother living like that. The other child did not understand. She accused the sibling of conniving with doctors to kill her mother, starve her to death. Because the question arose around the feeding and everything. The doctors said that the feeding is just prolonging her life. She's not going to wake up. She's not. Probably doesn't even hear what we are talking. And the other sibling did not agree, and it was sad. It was heartbreaking for everybody involved because they are losing their mother and they are fighting between them. It was a small family. This is the time for them to come together, and they were not. It was heartbreaking to see. But if their parent had stated her wishes maybe things would have been different.
Right.
Yes.
I think some parents even have their own misconceptions of living life forever, and as they age, then they don't have to worry as long as their children are alive, and their children will be able to step in to take care of them. But the children, as you explained, don't always agree.
Yes.
And living with cancer and having to survive through treatments, it's difficult enough, physically and emotionally taxing, but to have family drama as well added to it is just adding insult to injury.
Yes, it is. And, like I said, I like my job. It's very rewarding. I have learned a lot of things about us people.
Mm-hmm.
You will be fascinated at how selfish people can get.
Right.
At how you'll be fascinated at how, we do not see beyond our eyes. Something that seems very obvious to me or to you is not obvious to me, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
You will see all kinds of ugly fighting in front of the patient.
Definitely. I think once families get through the initial shock of a diagnosis, and then as they eventually adapt to understanding the unknown, then it seems like there's another part of them that starts focusing on the future of once they pass, and their ideas go to inheritance. And it amazes me how the person that they're maybe arguing about or caring for in their final days, that their concern goes towards, what do I get out of this in the end? And it still puzzles me to this day. And
that is a whole another topic.
Mm-hmm.
You'll be shocked at the level at which people can go.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know how it is. I don't know how it is in the United States about the estate law and everything. But here in Norway, I usually tell, like I said, when your loved one is diagnosed with cancer, there are chances of dying before you shoot up. So I usually talk to my patients. Like I said, I judge the situation. I see you have to get a certain chemistry with the patient before you can broach a subject like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I usually ask them, do you have your will in order?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, do you have your will, especially when the disease is starting to take, like, its toll. Like the disease is starting to get a grip on the body.
Mm-hmm.
So do you have your will in order? Is everything the way you would like it to be? Because you don't want the state involved. Things take longer. They have to incur charges. But if you leave things in order the way you wish them to be, then they don't have that infighting. You automatically cut out the infighting.
Right.
So I remember there was a patient that did not have their living will. This patient kept postponing. I think they didn't want to deal with it. I totally understand. I wouldn't even want to deal with that either. But they kept postponing. And we had a conversation, and this is a family that had blended children. Like they say blended. Mm-hmm. My children, your children, our children.
Right.
Yeah, and then there's the ex-wife on the side, and then, like that kind of blended family.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a long chat. We spoke for over an hour about that. I ended up helping them contact like a lawyer in I think they're called a state lawyer, something like that. Right. Lawyers who know that kind of law. So by the end of the conversation, I made a random call to a random lawyer I found on the internet. So, and they agreed to sort it out immediately.
Good. I'm glad you were able to help them sort things out. It's very similar here in the U.S., and that's where the caregiver compliance documents are vital, because not only does their loved one get an opportunity to speak their wants, their needs, their requests, they can begin their estate planning. So as the family goes through this together, then those typical arguments or those discussions of what the family wants are hopefully squashed because their loved one has already made the decisions and it's already documented and it's already in writing permanently and I know there's cases after the fact that even when the person chooses, they try to take it to court to attest the will, but at least there is a documentation in place to avoid a lot of this added heartbreak and trauma added to it, basically.
Can you imagine losing your loved one and not being able to speak to the people closest to you at the funeral? Can you even imagine that?
Yes,
how that feels. Yes,
I can. It's a very painful process when you're trying to actually mourn the loss of your loved one, but also fight over details that were not decided beforehand, and it just adds to the emotional process that this type of caregiver journey presents.
Yes.
So a diagnosis is hard enough to accept, and going through learning the terminology and then the treatments themselves and the added risk of delirium and dementia get thrown in, then families are having to switch roles in the household, which also adds some more stress. So once the treatments begin and they're actually going through, and it's not necessarily something they can avoid, everybody responds differently to treatment. How do you suggest families make the most of their time after treatment begins?
Yes. The number one thing I always say, this is like reality. This is not fiction. Chemotherapy takes a toll on the body. Because I don't know how you're familiar with how chemotherapy works. You start, for example, first dose today. Then the body breaks down around from 7 to 14. It's like the lower period. That is when the patients are most susceptible to infections and all that. Then after that time, the body starts building up again. Then the immunity comes up again, and everything comes up again, and then you get another dose, and then you go down again. It's like up and down until you finish treatment. That's how it is. So I always tell the patients, especially in the beginning, don't postpone things. Don't say you're waiting for you to finish your treatment before you do what you want, because we have different interests. Some people like fishing, being outdoors, and all that stuff. Some people like traveling. Some people are different. So I normally say, whatever it is that you want to do it in the start of the treatment, because the body is not so broken down yet. Like say 9 months into treatment or 6 months into treatment. So start do whatever it is that you want. If you want to have home meals, anything that you want, don't postpone until the end, because by the end you don't know where I'll be standing on your feet. You don't know. And then you lie in regret. I wish I went there. I wish I had done this. I wish I was more out in the outdoors. I wish.
Right.
Don't postpone. Don't postpone. Do it now. If you feel like you can stand on your legs and you're an outdoors, where we live, a lot of people are outdoors people. I am not. I'm not an outdoor person. Not where we live. A lot of people are outdoors people. They like being in the outdoors. So go do whatever you want. Don't postpone. Another thing I'd say is nutrition is important in cancer patients. At the same time, because of the treatment, many people lose their appetite and the taste in the mouth, like the palate and all that.
Right.
But you find one thing that you like to eat and binge on that. And during treatment, do not focus on the calories, eat what you want, add cream to the sauce if you like sauce, like gravy and all that. Add cream to increase the calories, at least so the patient maintains their weight. Not go up, but maintain. But we would like patients to go up. But not many people can go up during chemo, but they can maintain. Try as hard as you can to maintain. We have a lot of resources for people who have no appetite. So things have really changed. There's like all these, I think in America you have Ensure products like that.
Yes.
Yeah, so we have them here to keep the body going.
Right.
Yeah, to keep the body going because if you do not eat, you'll be spending time in bed, you'll not be spending time with your family, you'll not be doing the same things that you like to do.
Right.
But if you try to eat, what you can, then you'll be up and about and spending time with your loved ones and family. Another thing I see people do, at least here, okay, I understand when you have cancer, you don't want to spend your time in the hospital. I understand that. But ironically, the earlier you contact your doctor, the better.
Yes.
Because if you have not managed to drink anything for a day or two, the earlier you contact the doctor and you're admitted and get fluids, IV fluids, the better you'll bounce back.
Right.
Instead of waiting it out. You understand the logic?
Yes. You want to be able to avoid dehydration and other malnutrition that would cause further damage.
Yeah, I understand people don't want to be in hospital when you have cancer. You want to be doing whatever you want, but it doesn't help. I have seen people who say, and I think it is true, they haven't managed to drink for 2 days, and we see on the color of their urine. We see, so we know they're not lying. And we give them 2-3 liters a day, and they're up and going.
It helps with their recovery.
Yeah, it helps. People underestimate the importance of hydration.
Right. And the caregiver themselves have to keep up with their own hydration and their own nutritional habits to maintain their strength to help their loved one.
Yes. One thing I would like to say, it's going to sound woo, but actually the caregiver's health is number one priority.
Yes.
Because if you cannot use your phone if you haven't charged it.
Right.
Like we sit in the plane and they say, put your mask on first before you help your child.
Exactly.
Because if you faint, you will not be able to help your child.
Right.
So I understand in the beginning, like I said, you're trying to zoom in and take everything, take over everything. I understand it is difficult to make yourself a priority in the beginning. But I think as things try to sink in, caregivers need to take a step back. Don't lose contact with your people, with your network of friends and family and neighbors. Because from what I hear, caregiving can be pretty lonely, a lonely place.
Yes, it can be.
Yeah, can be a lonely place. It is sad. So try as hard as you can to maintain your small circle of friends. You set the boundaries. If you don't want to talk about your spouse's illness, you don't have to. You just have to inform them that I don't want to talk about that right now.
Right.
You set the boundaries for yourself. And another thing I see caregivers do is they lie. Like when I ask, how are you doing? And they are supposed to say, I'm fine and all that, but they are not.
Right.
So, I normally say the truth. You do not have to feel uncomfortable telling the truth. When instead of going around with the weight of you're not doing good and you're walking around with that weight, but you have to say something that is not true. I'm fine, but you're not. Sometimes that person is able to help you in a certain way. But because you're saying you're fine, they can't. They can't do anything. Say you're fine, but say the truth. I'm not fine.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not fine. I need help with ABC. And another thing for caregivers, if you need help, be precise. Say what you need help with. Don't just say, I need help. Be precise. Like, I would like something from the store. Would you help me pick it up? Like, be precise about what you want help with.
Exactly.
I need help picking up my children from school. Can you do that for me? There's one person I know who was very scared of asking for help. But when they did, they like I said, be precise. Say exactly what you want. And when they did it, they were shocked at the help they got.
It's funny how I think that the perception of having to remain strong for your loved one translates to you trying to give out this strong image to others. And when a caregiver is in this moment of need and able to be honest with themselves that they need help, then they can be honest with others to say, I need you to help me with X, Y, or Z. And the response, being able to ask for help, is difficult sometimes, but is necessary. Even if it feels uncomfortable, we have to make ourselves realize we can't do this all by ourselves. We can't handle this, and we do have to let go of some of the control and ask for help.
I think some people perceive asking for help as being weak, but I don't think it is being weak. I read somewhere that one of the most powerful things is to acknowledge the things, your limits, or something like that.
Yes.
Yeah, when you acknowledge your limitations, that is one of the most powerful things a human being can do for themselves.
Absolutely. And that is also another thing that I read through one of your blogs. I love that you mentioned there is no courage without fear.
Yes.
And so learning to let go may be going back to that journal, that daily record of your pros and cons, and writing down the things that you are afraid of and the things that you may need to let go of. And then sharing that maybe with another friend or a family member that you feel comfortable with. And it becomes this type of confession, this outward confession that you're not holding deep with yourself anymore.
And one more thing, or another thing I'd like to say, especially women, I have seen it a lot with women. Like, I think it is our nature, like we want to take care of things and organize, and, one thing as I see caregivers who have, let me say remission, who have their spouses in remission, they look back and they say, what was I doing? I took over everything from him. I never consulted him about what he wants. I just assumed he needed A, B, C, D, E. So there's one lady who told me, I never asked my husband what he wants. I just assumed. I took over everything. So then I asked, what would you have done? Then she said, I should have asked him, do you want me to drop you to the infusion center? We call them infusion centers here where they get the chemo from. If it is not the hospital, it's an infusion center. Would you like me to drop you at the infusion center? Maybe he doesn't want to. then I would use that time to fill my cup. So when he comes home, I'm refreshed, then we can talk or we can spend time together. But I never thought about that. I just assumed he needed me there. So I drove him. I sat with him through his infusions. When we got home, I was exhausted. I was tired. I was angry. But when I look back, this was all my doing. I cut out my friends. I cut out my gym time because I thought it was inappropriate for me to go to the gym when my husband was sick.
Right.
But I became a total mess. Because I don't know whether you work out, but working out makes you a better person.
And it doesn't. It doesn't. It does quite the opposite. It hurts the caregiver's health in response.
Yeah, if she doesn't work out, well, she cut out all the workouts. She thought it was inappropriate for her to be in the gym lifting weights and doing all that when she had someone sick at home. But she suffered terribly because she, and this is like in hindsight. So she told me next time, or if she sees someone in a similar situation, she's going to advise them to ask their spouse, do you need me to get you a coffee? Do you need me to drop you at the infusion center? Of course, if they can't drop themselves or if they have nobody to drop them, then you can drop them. But if they can drop themselves, because I have seen patients who drive themselves to and from. Yeah. It's not a bad thing to take care of yourself. It's not a bad thing at all. People think it is bad, but it is not.
It gives you the ability to say, I'm still here. I'm still with it. I can still do this. I think that if our loved ones are facing cancer treatment and if it's time for them to actually plan and schedule the treatments, chemotherapy, radiation, what have you, I believe that the best thing that the caregiver can do at this point is keep a daily record of the problems that may have happened before and after treatment, track medications, dosages, times, behavioral changes.
Yes.
Just to stay in tune with possibilities that there is something happening that would actually suggest that there is a dementia-related side effect.
Yes.
I think asking our friends and families for help may be difficult, but we've got to do that. And then talking to the healthcare providers as soon as possible if different patterns start to emerge.
Yes.
Getting plenty of rest and restorative sleep is absolutely important to keep going with this day-to-day struggle. It is so incredibly important.
Yes, and nutrition is up there with sleep.
Yes.
Proper nutrition.
Nutrition and to keep an eye on avoiding dehydration for you and your loved one.
Dehydration and pumping your body with sugar is going to bring you down.
Right.
Yeah, so you need to eat proper food.
Exactly.
And there's one thing, like when you're talking about sleep, there are many, this is now like advanced stage caregiving, people who have like dementia, for example, or delirium. And they say, and maybe the loved one says, maybe the loved one says, I want to die at home, or I want to be at home as long as possible. And the spouse promised them that I will not send you to a facility. And now things have changed because people with delirium and some people with dementia, they are up all night going. They are in and out of the house. They are in the house going. And if you're the caregiver, you can't let them go. It means you have to be awake with them. They are going in the house at night. You're not sleeping. And maybe I have seen this. I've seen patients who have gone, the patients who have like brain metastasis. they have gone like 3 days in a row and they have not slept in 3 days.
Yes.
They are up and going and they have this energy. They are manic. And the caregiver, the spouse, most likely, is up with them going 3 days. So I remember I had a conversation like this with one spouse, and I told her, I don't think you can live like this anymore. You're going to break down. She said, thank you for understanding. I don't think so many people understand. It is expected of you. Then I told her, I don't think it is expected that you will go, you up and going 3 nights in a row.
Right.
I don't, I said, I don't think it is expected. I don't even want to think about it, but I think it is time for him to go in a facility. You can't live like this.
Exactly.
She was like sobbing and she was all gray and like we haven't slept. She said, we haven't slept in 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
He's up and manic and going and talking non-stop.
And those are those delicate boundaries that have to be identified as well.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but I promised him, but I said, I know you promised, I know. But now things have changed. You didn't know things would end up this way, neither did he. He didn't know, and he didn't know things are going to be this way.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Brain metastasis and the delirium and all that. I think that is the worst. I don't want to say worst, but it is one of the most traumatic experiences to the relative. Seeing your loved one become another person.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And they are manic and they are talking and they are going. It's like you put a switch on and they can't stop. They are going and going and talking and in and out. And some of them are volatile. They are violent. Some of them are violent. And the wife or the husband is putting up with all that because it is expected of them. To that particular person, I said, no, it is not expected of you because you're going to break down.
Yes. And that's where the caregiver has to find that line of what is good for them and not always thinking what's for their loved one because they're going to run out. Their energy is not something that's always going to be there. And that's where I want to encourage caregivers to listen to a previous podcast as well covering caregiver compliance and figure out what are the needs and find, in addition to finding out what your loved one wants, find your boundaries, find your limitations, know what you can and what you cannot do, how far you can and shouldn't go even, and then try to find peace with that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Esther, for sharing this information with us today. I appreciate so much. These are areas that people don't understand until they're in the moment. So I think that as we continue to have, there will continue to be the debate out there as to whether or not chemotherapy may or may not cause dementia, trying to determine where the status of the loved one was before and after treatments. It is all up for debate, but there are areas that we need to be aware of beforehand just so that we're not blindsided. And at this point, I hope this gave you more food for thought. And until next time, I wish you to be proactive. Take care, everybody.
Thank you for joining us today. We really hope you've enjoyed this episode. To learn more about proactive caregiving and to hear other episodes of this podcast, please visit www.jessicalazelcannon.com. This podcast is produced by Cannon Light Media, LLC, www.cannonlightmedia.com. Music provided by Chris Paradise.